This episode, I do a little bit of jumping around, but I'm using people who have similar names and showing how just the slight change makes a big difference. And then using two people that have the same kind of theme behind them, but by breaking down their name and birthday, I can show there's a depth and separation that their name indeed shows. So let's get into it. I've been looking forward to doing this one because, as I've said many times, none of this is coincidence. But take a look at Dana White, the UFC CEO. Dana Frederick White Jr., born July 28, 1969. As I've said many times, Dan, the word Dan is like the active things being done. To and from or dia, active notion or nature. Now you add an A on that. So it's dia, active, notion or nature, active. Now the word or name Frederick, you can hear rhetoric or redirect. But if you put a form or force, F, and then you reference expressing dia or to and from, an expressed reference, identified constant to itself kinetic, and then you have the word white, just a simple, easy word or name like white, plural, hit, expression, or plural, here identified plus expression. And with it being dia, active, notion, active, form, reference, expressing, dia, expressed reference, identified constant to itself kinetic, and then a plural, here identified plus expression, or the plural hit expression, along with his birthday being July, simplified to the 7th month, generated and grouped, or G, 28th, which is in a space or based here, and then 1969 is to subject form identified or to subject force identified. And he's the UFC CEO, where people come together to fight as a dia, active, notion or nature, active, form, rhetoric or force, rhetoric, redirect, plural, hit expression. See how none of this is just a coincidence. It's just interestingly right in front of us with everything. So by any means, does anybody think I'm just making this up? Continuing from Dana White with the idea of a plural W hit expression, now we have Reginald Howard White, Reggie White, a world-famous defensive end. When you look at his name, you'll see that the word regional is in there, spelled a little differently, but regional. He happens to be a defensive end with the name of Reginald Howard White. So if you had Reginald as in a reference expressing a generated and grouped identified nature or notion, active as it lies to and from, and then you hear ongoing plural, active reference to and from, he's the defense, not the offense, the plural, here ongoing plural, active reference to and from, and then it's plural, here identified plus expression. He doesn't allow anyone to move forward. The object of the defense is not to let them move at all. So if you were going to guard people from gaining any space, you would be a regional, here ongoing plural active reference to and from, plural hit expression. He's a defensive end who hit hard and didn't want to let people move forward. Of course, his birthday being December 19th, 1961 is as it lies. So you put the ball there. 19 subject, okay? Now that subject, force active. Soon as the ball's snapped, he stops it. Form active. As it lies, subject, force active. Regional, here ongoing plural, active reference to and from the ball. White, plural, here identified plus expression. Soon as the ball moves, you stop that from happening. I know it sounds ridiculous, but just think about it. And that's what he did in his life. Of course, it's going to have so many other things going on in his life as well, but this happens to be his pattern. So this next one, I could take a long time doing, but I'm going to try to sum it up kind of simple. We just did Dana White followed by Reggie White, whose full name would be Reginald White. And now we have Reginald Dwight, which happens to be Elton John's birth name. I won't go too much into Elton John, besides EL is saying the expressed ling or the expressed active base. EL is known as the earth god. So if you had EL plus ongoing notion or nature, it's basically saying the tone of God. God tone, Elton. Elton. I know it sounds funny to say it like that, but just understand. Plus ongoing notion can also mean 2,000. A ton is 2,000 pounds. which would be EL to the housing. Now, that may not resonate with you specifically, but Elton John has had an effect across the world for a long time. And the word John is the intense, ongoing here notion or nature. Then to see how that ties into his birth name, Reginald Kenneth Dwight. Regina means queen. When you're a man who is gay and you happen to be English and you're knighted, they call you sir, obviously you had something to do with the queen. Regina is queen. Of course, he didn't go by that name, but then if you see how that ties him to what he ended up doing in his life, he was known across the world for his voice. Elton, Reginald, along with the queen. Kenneth, kinetic, expressed, notion or nature in that spot, expressed plus here, and Dwight is dia, plural, identified, generated here plus. I know these things seem simple, but they're universal. They're for everybody. And then along with those, his birthday is March 25th, 1947, which would be constant to itself, or the unseen concept, vitally identified for the Y or base expressed. And then 1947 is to subject, dia, generated and grouped. To subject from himself, or to subject to and from G, a guy who seems like a girl, who's Regina, Queen, England, Dwight, to and from a plural identity, generated here plus. See how that all goes with him. It may be hard to wrap your head around because I'm trying to use the same words to explain them, because they do. It's just you have to try to understand what it means from different contexts, and that may be hard. To circle back around to Dana White from UFC, now that I did the Whites and the Reginalds, Randy Couture is one of the UFC fighters that was a coach during the Ultimate Fighter, and he was a champion for a while. Randall, or Randy, R is the 18th letter, which would be 1-8, which could be active here. So if you're active handy, or Randy, and he was one of the coaches, or the constant to itself, ongoing, underlying, plus underlying reference expressed to coach, or to express himself from his constant ongoing unit, plus underlying reference expressed, and his name is Randall, reference active notion, dia, active between two L's, Dwayne, dia, unit, active notion expressed, and then Couture. It all goes together with somebody who's physical, punching, kicking, and then teaching it. These things aren't just accidents that play out in people's lives. If you go from his middle name, and just to show how the universe is cute in certain ways, if you've ever heard of Iron Fist, Danny Rand, or Dan Rand, his middle name has Dan in it. His first name is Randall, so he's literally got Iron Fist suggested in his name, and he's a fighter. Yes, that's a cute little coincidence, but our names are like novels. Each one of us has a lifetime in our name because it vibrates with us our whole life. And it is the informational frequency we happen to be identified by. Try to absorb what I mean by that. Anyway, his birthday is June 22nd, 1963, which would be June 6, form or force. 22 is based base or vital, V. And then 1963 is to subject, form or force, constant to itself. So you could say June 6, form or force, 22, vital. And then 1963 is subject, force, constant to itself. So he's a fighter and a coach of fighters. I'm sure you see how that vibrates with his name, Randy Couture. Next, someone that everyone has heard of, Hugh Hefner. Notice we're not talking about a heifer, a female cow. We're talking about a Hefner. And the hue has a lot to do with your color or your appearance. So first, take those into consideration. And then his full name is Hugh Marston Hefner. Here, unit, generated here, manifest active reference, subject plus ongoing notion or nature. Then, here expressed form, nature expressed reference, or here expressed familiar, notion or nature expressed reference. Now, if you can't see how that really points to showing someone's naked body after you say the here unit, generated here, manifest active reference, subject plus ongoing notion or nature, then here expressed form or familiar, nature expressed reference. If you can't see it there, then add the birthday, April 9th, which is April, 4, dia, or to and from, 9, which is I, identified, and then 1926 is subject, base, form, or subject from one side to the other. And he's known for plenty of pretty women getting their picture taken, and him being the man who owns the magazine that shows that around the world. If that's not from one side to the other, or base form or base familiar, I don't know what else could possibly explain that better than the here unit generated and grouped here, manifest active reference, subject plus ongoing notion or nature, here expressed form, nature expressed reference, dia or to and from the identified, subject, base form, or subject from one side to the other. That's Hugh Hefner. See what I'm saying? If you don't, I'll keep showing you. Now, to wrap this up and to go from Hugh Hefner to somebody who did something even more in-depth than that, it wasn't just breasts and elegantly fashioned photos. It was the raw side, the more smutty, more graphic version. Hustler magazine. And the founder of Hustler magazine was Larry Claxton Flint Jr. If you know what a flint is, it's something that sparks fire. If you would think of the word Aries as that which arises, but then you put an L in front of it and it's spelled Larry, the active base or the as it lies that actively references upon itself as a vital identity, Larry Flint. The form as it lies, vitally identified notion plus. I have a vitally identified notion of something that's an active base, actively referenced upon itself, vitally identified, with Claxton in it, constant to itself or the unseen, as it lies or the active base, the active center, X, plus the ongoing notion. And when you put them all together, as it lies, active reference or the human letter R, who you are, referenced upon itself, vitally identified, constant or unseen to itself, as it lies or the active base, active center, plus the ongoing notion, and that form, as it lies, vitally identified notion plus, and his birthday is November, which is K, kinetic or actively active, A, action, 1942, is to subject, dia, or to and from, the base. And it's all about the money shots and the graphic everything part of sex and pornography. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about any of these people. I also wanted to include him because he has Junior, just like our first person, Dana White Jr. Junior references the idea of the son. And the son doesn't necessarily represent lesser than, but it's not the father. It's the son of. It's not the senior, it's the junior. So the guy who was popular for fighting, showing the brutality side of man, is Dana, the dia active notion of action, plural hit expression, junior, the son of that. And the guy who does the more raw, graphic, not necessarily childish, but seen as immature version of sexuality, there was Hugh Hefner that did the, I'm not trying to sound rude, but heifers are known to be milked. And milk comes from what? Breasts. Hugh Hefner is known for showing off the hue or the outside color of girls, women, breasts. Heifer, Hefner. But a human version, so it's not heifer, of course not to be disrespectful, but Hefner. And then the next guy who goes more graphic is Larry, the as it lies, active reference upon itself, vitally identified, Claxton, constant or unseen, as it lies, active center, plus ongoing notion, and then Flint, form or force, as it lies, vitally identified, notion or nature, plus. So it's all that stuff combined. And then Junior is the lesser version or the son of Senior. So it's the more immature version. See how I'm trying to say this in a way that you can understand it, because it's literally something that you can understand. It's not just coincidence. That's why I keep saying it, because none of this is. I don't know how else to show it. Because when it comes down to what the solutions for our problems in the world are, it comes down to realizing that we're here to live out of our sin and move away from it, to see what problems we need to fix and not bask in them. We can do everything in a more mature way that's not hurting or harming other people. And that's something we're supposed to be working towards, obviously. So hopefully you can take these in a mature way, because I'm not trying to be rude or insensitive to anybody. I'm just showing that this is everywhere, everything, and everyone. because we're all the universe in form, or God, playing itself. And that's not to degrade anyone's opinion of it. That's not to harm anybody's idea of how magnificent the world or the universe is, because it is. And if we start seeing it for what it really is, we can do great things together. That's my only intention with any of this. So hopefully you can see where I'm coming from. Until next time, peace and God bless.